everyone, Elsie Jensen here. Today we are going to make a chicken, pumpkin, and black bean soup with some bougie grilled cheese. One's going to be on my pumpkin sourdough bread that I baked up this weekend, and then some pumpkin chocolate chip cookies. So let's start by getting our onions caramelizing for our soup. And then we'll get our chicken in the oven roasting to throw in our soup as well. And then we'll move on to making our cookies. So I've got one large yellow onion here. So we're just going to slice this down, take off this whole top layer here. And then we're going to dice it up into our soup. We're going to let it caramelize so that it adds some great flavor to our broth base, which we're going to be adding pumpkin puree to our broth as well. So it'll have this nice pumpkin notes to it. And then we're going to add some sweet potatoes and carrots, corn, peppers, and whatnot for our soup. There we go. And you don't have to do too small of a dice, but you don't want any super large chunks in there. Okay, we're going to get this added into our soup here. I'm going to turn on my burner to about a 6, so a medium high on there. And we're going to let this onion start to kind of saute up and caramelize, bring out their natural sweetness. And let's prep our chicken here. So I've got one good sized chicken breast here. So I'm going to use some kitchen shears and we're going to make a couple snips across our chicken breast because we're going to roast this in the oven. But this is going to allow some of that, our seasoning and spices to kind of sink into it as well as allow it to cook up a little bit faster. So just a bunch of, you could also use a knife, but I find it's easier with a scissors. We're going to drizzle it with a little bit of olive oil, like a teaspoon or so. A little bit of Worcestershire sauce. There we go. And then a little bit of liquid smoke. Be very careful. It kind of comes out of the bottle fast, so I like to pour it into the cap. You need like around 1/4 to 1/2 of a teaspoon. Give it a nice little smoky flavor, which I think will really complement our soup. And then I've got some onion powder. It's a new one, so I'm going to open this up. We're going to sprinkle it with a little bit of onion powder and then some ancho chili powder, smoked paprika, a little garlic salt, and oregano. So nice little shake over it because we want the chicken to have a nice flavor in here, especially since we're using a chicken breast. A little smoked paprika. Got some ancho chili powder, and these are all spices that we're also going to be using in our soup as well. And then a little bit of dried oregano. There we go. And a little bit of garlic salt. Let's give our onions a quick stir, and then I'm going to pop my chicken in the oven at 350, and it's going to cook. That's the same temperature that we're going to be cooking our cookies at. So I'll pop it in there, and when it's after about 20 or so minutes, it should be cooked all the way through, and we'll shred it and put it in our soup.
You have a question? Is Jack's birthday party tonight?
It is. We're going to have kind of like an earlier one right after nap for it, and he's got his presents waiting for him. So hopefully, he'll be excited and happy. He played with his balloons all day, and then it's so funny because I gave him a shower today, like he joined me, and he had to bring his balloons into the shower because he was so in love with them, I should say. Okay, I have a cup of brown butter that I have let cool so you can kind of see the nice amber colored and the golden brown milk solids. So this is going to be for our pumpkin chocolate chip cookies. The brown butter is going to give you this wonderful chewy texture and the flavor. I'm just making sure I get all of those milk solids in there because that's what has that kind of caramely, nutty aroma to it when we make our cookies. So lovely. Just be careful, when you brown your butter that you don't scorch it or burn it because the burn brown butter is not very good. We're going to add in a half a cup of granulated sugar and a half a cup of brown sugar. And these are going to be a chewy pumpkin chocolate chip cookies. I know a lot of chocolate or pumpkin chocolate chip cookies out there are more cake-like. This is more of a chewy pumpkin chocolate chip cookie, so a little bit richer and more delicious. And then we're going to add in a half a cup of our brown sugar, and we're going to mix those together. There we go. Pack it in. And then we're going to kind of cream our brown sugar and our brown butter and our granulated sugar together in here. There we go. We're just going to mix them up. It has such a lovely kind of caramely aroma to it. It just smells wonderful. There we go. And you want to make sure that your brown butter has cooled. It doesn't need to re-solidify. It just needs to be cooled off. Give my onions a little stir here. And I'm going to turn this down to about a 4 now that it's nice and hot. Okay. Let's add in our spices. We're going to do about a tablespoon of pumpkin pie spice here. And this is going to give it that nice fall flavor to it. There we go. So, a tablespoon of our pumpkin pie spice. And then we're going to add in a teaspoon of salt. And we're going to add in 2 teaspoons of vanilla extract. So we've got 1, 2, and then we're going to add in a teaspoon of our baking soda. Grab a paper towel here. And dry it out, otherwise the vanilla will make the baking soda stick to it.
Well, the kids tagged you on the back of your sweater.
Oh my gosh, they probably did. Oh yeah, I'm sure that is Jack. That was probably Jack after his pancakes. I made him pancakes for breakfast today. Always the love. I was wondering, he was sitting there, with young kids, you can't go out in public with them sometimes because you'll realize that you've got all sorts of gunk from them smeared all over you. Okay, mixing in our spices, our salt, and our baking soda in here. So it was 1 teaspoon of baking soda. Now, before we add in our eggs, we're going to add in our pumpkin puree, but we're going to do something a little bit different with our pumpkin puree. Instead of scooping it straight in there, you're going to, I know that sounds weird, but you're going to blot it, with some paper towels to kind of scoop out the extra moisture in it. Otherwise, it's going to mess with your consistency of your cookies. And this is going to allow it to give you a nice chewy cookie versus one that is cake-like. So I've got my paper towels here. This does not want to come off. There we go. And we need about 2/3 a cup of our pumpkin mixture. Let me see if I got a 1/3 cup here. And we're going to blot it down to about a 1/3 cup. So just kind of taking out all of that extra moisture out of it. So start with 2/3 and then we're going to kind of blot it dry. Just similar to how you work with, like zucchini, when you're making those type of like zucchini bread and you got to squeeze all that liquid out. Same thing with this because you don't want it too runny. We'll squeeze one more in there. I know it seems kind of weird, but trust me. So we're just going to spread it out. And you can already see it's like picking up some of the color in the paper towel. But see how much extra liquid there is in here? You want to take all of that out so that you're not adding too much liquid into your cookie. fun. Here we go.
You have a question? What do you do with the leftover pumpkin?
We are actually going to be using this pumpkin in our black bean soup. I always love to try to use my can of pumpkin up in one time because otherwise it goes into your fridge and you forget about it. And then, when you clean out your fridge like 2 months later, it's there as an science experiment. Okay. But you see just how much liquid, and this was doubled up paper towels, and how much more thicker it gets as you work with it. Here we go. Trying to get as much of that out. I might grab a little bit more paper towel too. Almost if you could put it through a cheesecloth as well and kind of strain it. But this is going to give you a much better ending to our cookie. I know it's not commonly done with pumpkin puree, but same concept as with our, grab a little bit more, zucchini. We'll pop this in here, but you can just see how much liquid we've already gotten out of this. And this is going to allow us to get as much pumpkin flavor out of our pumpkin without having to have so much extra liquid and extra flour, which is why most pumpkin cookies are like a cake-like. Here we go. But as you see, it's shrinking in size. So we're essentially taking our 2/3 and we're bringing it down to about 1/3 of our pumpkin base. Here we go. I think we're just about here with this. And squeeze this last little bit out. But you see, it's enough that you can actually pick it up almost like Play-Doh. Here we go. And then we're going to mix this into our sugar and our butter mixture and kind of cream that pumpkin into it. Here we go. Now, if you're using fresh pumpkin puree, that a lot of times when you roast up a pumpkin, you end up adding a little bit of liquid to make it more of a puree texture. If you just roast it up and you leave it kind of that nice denseness to it, then you don't have to squeeze out all the extra liquid. There we go. Okay, let me give our onions a quick little stir over here. We got them caramelizing up. Here, beautiful. For it. And this is going to be for our pumpkin chicken and black bean soup. We're going to use our pumpkin puree in there to kind of make a nice richer broth. And the other part, of course, goes into our cookies. Now we are going to separate our eggs in here. And this is going to be for our pumpkin chocolate chip cookies. So we're going to use just the yolk. And the reason why we're going to use just the yolk is just like we're squeezing out that extra liquid in the pumpkin, is we want a chewy cookie and not a cake-like cookie. So we're going to use 2 egg yolks. There we go. Kind of go back and forth. Get all that egg white off. Let me give my hands a quick rinse. And then we're going to just add in, and you see how we have a much thicker base to it simply because we haven't added in so much liquid, which will be great for when we add in our flour and then our chocolate chips. So mix that around. Beautiful. And then we are going to add in our flour. We're going to use about 1 2/3 cup of flour plus a smidge more. So just make sure I don't have any air pockets in here. So we've got 1, and then I need about 2/3 of a cup more. Just got to make sure I can see it on here. Perfect. And we're going to mix this in, and this is the base part, and then we'll add in our chocolate chips. Okay. Mix these in here. And this is going to give us a nice thick kind of cookie dough batter. which is what makes these cookies nice and chewy, especially with that brown butter. You're going to just get that lovely flavor. And brown butter is so lovely. It's kind of, takes an extra step, but it can really add a lot of flavor and texture to your cookies. Here we go. So let's mix these guys all the way up. But you just see how we have just such a lovely and thick cookie dough batter for our pumpkin chocolate chip cookies. And that, again, is what's going to make these cookies so delicious. Okay, we've got this just about mixed in. I'm going to give my onions a quick stir, and then we're going to add in our chocolate chips. So I've got my onions here. We've got a lovely caramelization on it. They're wonderful. And then I realized I forgot to set my chocolate chips out, so let me grab those real quick. You want to use a good chocolate chip for our cookies here. And we need just about a cup of cookies because this is only going to make, it's not a huge batch of cookies. So I want about a cup of a good quality chocolate chip cookie in here. So we're going to use up the rest of the chocolate chips. Last night I made chocolate frosting for Jack's cake. We used almost that whole bag, but I had about a cup left. We're going to mix our cookies in, and then we're going to roll out our little balls and bake these guys up. Yep. Man overboard. Now I'm using just regular semi-sweet cookies, but you could also do a white chocolate chip cookie as well, or a milk chocolate chip cookie or chocolate chip for it. But I find the semi-sweet is that perfect type of, it's not overly sweet, where both milk and white chocolate, I think, are sweeter. Here we go. Beautiful. So we've got our cookie dough all mixed up here. Now, before we shape those up, I'm going to actually get my next set in my soup here because as you can see, our onions are just beautiful. They've got this nice golden yellow color to them, so they're caramelizing up wonderfully. So I'm going to get our carrots in there and our sweet potatoes in so they can start sauteing while our cookies bake because our cookies are only going to need about 10 minutes. So I've got 3 carrots that we're going to add in here. And then I have a sweet potato that we're going to saute up as well. These will all kind of work really well with the pumpkin base to it. Their flavors are going to go just be delicious. And I also have some sweet peppers that we're going to add in and all that jazz. Okay, get our little scraps over here. We're going to take off our tops here and our bottoms. And then, since I don't want to have super huge pieces of carrots, I'm just going to halve each kind of them. Maybe not the very bottom of this one because it's pretty thin. And then we're just going to dice these up. Have good smaller size pieces of carrots because carrots are a firmer vegetable and so they take a little bit longer to cook. But if you cut them up smaller, they'll cook a little bit faster. There we go. So we're going to get our carrots into our base here with our onions, and we'll let them have a nice saute up. I love, when I make soups, I always like to saute up my veggies because it adds more flavor to the broth, gives a nicer texture to the veggies in the soup as well. Here we go. Got those in there. And then I've got my nice kind of my sweet potato here. There we go. This is such a long one. I'm going to cut it down the middle. And then I'm just going to kind of slice around the outside of it to take off the skin for this. Because sweet potatoes, I think, are such a pain to peel with a peeler. So I find it's just easier to kind of cut the skins off. And you get rid of some of that drier part of it, the whiter part of the skin underneath. So we've got that guy chopped up or peeled up. We'll get our next one. Now I'm using sweet potatoes. You could also use some diced up butternut squash in here or even diced up pumpkin squash and saute it as well. The sweet potatoes will hold their shape a little bit better than butternut squash or pumpkin, but those are both great options too. Okay, and then we're going to cube these guys up, and we'll add them in there so they can start to saute up a little bit as well. Here we go. And I don't want too big of pieces because I do want them to cook up fairly quickly. And that way you can have just a lovely bite of, veggie in every spoonful. And then we'll shape up our cookies. And then we'll finish up our snout. And then we're going to make our bougie grilled cheese. So yesterday we did like bougie pizzas at my mom's house in her like outdoor pizza oven. And I made this one with fig jelly and manchego cheese and freshness. And it was so good that I'm actually going to do one of those, my sandwich today, but with the fig jelly, fresh figs, and havarti cheese on my pumpkin sourdough bread because I can. There we go. Let's give this a quick stir. Kind of coat these all up, and we're going to let these saute for just a quick second. Looks like I got a little potato root in there. Beautiful. Okay, let me grab my little soup spoon. I'm going to wash my hands, and then we're going to shape up our pumpkin cookies. Just get a little bit. So again, this is such a nice and thick dough that it's really easy for working with, which just makes it lovely. And you've got that pumpkin pie spice in there that's going to give you that fall flavor. But we're going to just grab a little ball, and we'll shape it up. Now they'll spread out a little bit, but not too much on here. And there we go. We'll see. We might just start with 3. But giving them a nice little roll. But these are one of those cookies. I still remember the very first time I had a pumpkin chocolate chip cookie. I was in high school, and we went to this festival in Franklin, Tennessee called It's the Dickens. And it's like a kind of like a Charles Dickens theme festival where people dressed up in these gears. And this was like 20 some years ago. I actually think I was in middle school, not even in high school. I was in middle school. But there was a baker who was selling these pumpkin chocolate chip cookies there. That was when they were first starting to kind of get big. And I fell in love with them. And I tried really hard trying to recreate that recipe for years because they were just that perfect type of pumpkin and chocolate chip that wasn't like a pumpkin loaf, almost like a pumpkin muffin, but was actually like a cookie. Okay, we'll just do 4 here, and then we'll have for our next batch. So we've got 12 out. We're going to pop these in the oven. These are going to bake at 350 for 10 minutes. Now, depending on your oven, I always say these take longer at my mom's house with her gas oven. They can take up to 12 minutes, but these typically here are about 10 minutes. You want them to be a little bit soft, and but they'll firm up. We move the chicken down. It looks like it's almost done. But we have our chicken for our soup that we coated with our lovely spices. I throw that down there.
You have a question? Where can they find the cookie recipe?
So we will upload this video to the link on our page so you can always watch and recreate the recipe again at home. I might make this a recipe for my members. Every week I like to send out a couple recipe cards for our members so that they have easy access to the recipes. But for everybody else, we do upload all of our videos, so you can always recreate those by watching them. Okay, so we've got our cookies in for 10 minutes now. Let me give this a nice little saute here, or stir up here. And then we're going to chop up our peppers to go into our soup because it is kind of a Southwest themed soup. So I've got a couple sweet peppers here because, again, I'm not a big spicy girl. And we're going to dice them up, and then we will add them to our soup or to our base of our sauteed veggies. Get them a quick little, saute on them. There we go. And for these, I don't have, just a kind of a smaller, medium-sized dice. It doesn't need to be, super small, but you don't want it also so big where you're only getting a pepper in every bite. There we go. And this one looks like it had a baby pepper inside. And then we'll throw these in, and then we're going to add in our pumpkin puree, our spices, and kind of work on the base of our soup, the broth part, before we add in our water and our chicken bouillon. Here we go. So let's add these guys in here. But right now we've got some really pretty colors going in our soup right now. Give this a nice little stir. There we go. And now we're going to add in our dry spices first. Let them kind of get a little heat, bring in the temperature, and then we'll add in our pumpkin. So we're going to use some smoked paprika. I'm going to use about a teaspoon or so. A good shake around. We've got our ancho chili powder. I'm going to use about a teaspoon of that as well. There we go. And then some dried oregano. We're going to use about a teaspoon. Give it a good shaky shake. Some onion powder. This actually is just going to meld really well into the pumpkin and to the broth and give it a nice kind of savory flavor. We're going to use about a teaspoon and a half of this. And since we're going to be using chicken bouillon, we don't need to add any salt because that salt will just come from that bouillon. Here we go. We're going to let it just heat up for just a second here. I always like to toast up my spices, let it hit the heat first before adding the liquid base to it because it just melds a little bit better. Here we go. And man overboard. Here we go. And I have mine cooking right now over about a 4, 5-ish, medium heat. Not too high. You don't want to, scald it, but not too low either. Okay, now we're going to add in our pumpkin. So I have about a cup of pumpkin left. So we're going to add this all in here. And this is going to marry on with our broth for our soup here. And it's a great way to we've got our sweet with our cookie, and now we've got our savory with our soup, but it's a great way to use up your whole can of pumpkin. Before we add in our broth, we're going to just mix this pumpkin in, let it mix with those spices, let it really jive together. So you've got this nice kind of thick paste forming. Think of it as similar to using tomato paste, but we're using pumpkin. Here we go. And now what I'm going to use is I've got 4 cups of water, and then we'll add in a big heaping spoonful of our chicken bouillon, but you can always use chicken broth. Again, I just find chicken bouillon's a little bit nicer. We're going to start out by adding in about a cup of our water or chicken broth, or you can go vegetarian, use vegetable broth as well. And we're going to just mix it all together. And as you see, that pumpkin's going to kind of hydrate, and it's going to allow it to form this nice thick paste. Make sure you scrape the bottom of your dish as you go so that you can really bring those spices that are kind of stuck on the bottom up. We're going to add another cup in and give it a nice mix here. Looking good. I always add my water in slowly, or my broth in slowly, instead of dumping it all in at one time. This is going to allow you to just make that broth nice and rich. It also allows you to stop at the right time. Sometimes I'll be like, oh, I'm going to add in 4 cups, but really I only needed 3.5. So it allows you to make sure you get your thickness to the right consistency, and it prevents you from just bringing down the temperature all at one time. Add a little bit more. Here we go. Beautiful. And we're going to add in our last bit of our water in here for our pumpkin black bean soup, our chicken and pumpkin black bean soup. Give it a good mix around. And then I'm going to get a spoon and we're going to add in a big scoop of chicken bouillon. And that's going to give us that nice chicken flavor, but as well as the saltiness to our broth based. And then we're going to work on our grilled cheeses over here while we let this simmer and bring up before we add in our corn and our black beans and our cilantro and green onions. So a big kind of heaping tablespoon of chicken bouillon. There we go. We'll mix this in. Make sure I get all of that bouillon off of my spoon. And then we're going to let this kind of simmer here over our medium heat for a few minutes. Let that soften up our vegetables. Luckily, our vegetables don't need to do as much softening because you sauteed them, so you already started that cooking process. Let's get all of this stuff for our grilled cheeses. Got quite my little collection over here.
You have a question? Where do you find the large jar of the bouillon?
That's from Costco. So that's the only place I've seen to find it, but Costco makes the really big ones and they typically only have the three, the beef, the vegetable, and the chicken. They don't have their specialty ones. But it's nice because it's a little bit cheaper than if you buy the, the smaller ones. So let's see, open up my bread bag here. I've got a regular traditional loaf, and then for mine, I've got my pumpkin loaf. Look how beautiful that is. This is just a basic plain pumpkin, no other spices in it, but it is so delicious. And I'm going to use that one for my sandwich.
Do you like the paste better than the bouillon cubes?
I do, because I feel like it tastes a little bit fresher and it mixes in much nicer to the soup. It dissolves better. So I really like it. Although, before I growing up, I always used the cubes. But I was about, I think, in high school, and it was like my brother-in-law. He was like, "Oh, you've got to try this. It's so much better." And I have not gone back to using the cubes since then. Okay, we've got that one. Let me even off this slice of bread right here. I've been slowly cutting off pieces of my pumpkin bread and eating it all day. So good. We cut it down, and I love it because it just has such a pretty color too. And I did a pumpkin seed crust on it, which is just lovely. It's such a good bread. I make it two ways. I have it, this is the plain way, and then you can add also cinnamon and nutmeg to give it a little bit more of a fall flavor to it. Okay, let me get my griddle here turned on so it can start warming up. We're going to rub a little bit of butter on one side of each slice of bread, and we can have it start kind of toasting up for this. I'm going to find my nice two flat sides. Here we go. And get this on here. Now, for my plain Jane cameraman, he's going to just get some havarti and salami, but mine's going to have fig jelly and fresh figs. And then we're going to go grab our cookies out of the oven because they are beeping at us. Just going to rub this last little bit of butter on here, and then we'll head over there and grab our pumpkin cookies. There we go. We can let that start toasting up, getting nice and warm for our grilled cheeses. Okay. Look at those gorgeous cookies. So these are our pumpkin brown butter chocolate chip cookies. I'm going to grab them out, and I'm also going to grab our chicken because it should be nice and done as well. That way we can let it cool off before I have to shred it in here. But these cookies are gorgeous, delicious. They'll be lovely and chewy. You need to let them sit on your baking sheet for about 5 minutes before you transfer them. The residual heat of the baking sheet kind of cooks them a little bit longer, but they are going to be chewy and delicious. They've got that pumpkin spice in it, the pumpkin puree, and the brown butter and the brown sugar, and it's just going to be absolutely wonderful. Okay, let's get back to making our grilled cheeses here. Okay. So for the pumpkin one, I'm going to add on some fig jelly, which is delicious. It's got this nice kind of sweet, but not super sweet, and it pairs so well with the cheese and I feel like in the pumpkin. But we made this pizza last night with it, with fresh figs and the fig jelly and manchego cheese, and it was so good. So I was like, you know what? I'm going to try to do that in a grilled cheese today, and make it just as delicious. I'm only going to put the jelly on one side of my slices of bread instead of on both, because I don't want so much sweetness that it becomes a little too overpowering for it. But we're going to do some havarti cheese, which is a nice semi-soft cheese that isn't too powerful in flavor, but will work really well with the sweet flavors. And then we'll do havarti on the other one as well, which is going to work well with the salami that we're going to use. Here we go. And then I'm just going to, any bits that are kind of hanging over, I'm just going to put them in the middle so that they don't melt onto my skillet and burn.
You have a question. What's the best way to reheat the cookies without drying them out?
So if you put them in the microwave for like 5 seconds, you can kind of reheat them on there, and that kind of keeps them well. I always like to store them in an airtight container, which tends to keep them very moist. The trick is not to over bake them. If you over bake them, your cookie is going to get dried out. But if you have it where you've got just the perfect amount of baking time, they will be chewy and soft, but they don't dry out. Like we made last week, we made some brown sugar pumpkin cookies. And even I think we had a couple left over yesterday, and they were still soft and chewy and not dry at all. And it's just making sure you don't over bake them. Okay, we're going to put salami on. This is for my husband, so he's getting extra salami because he's going to love it. We'll keep his simple. He's boring on there. And then for mine, we're going to add on some fresh figs and then some gouda. So we'll have havarti and gouda and the same thing on there. And I just love gouda. It's so good. And then we'll work on our soup here. Let me grab 2 figs. That should be good. I have a fig tree outside and I have about 30 figs, but it's gonna be a month or so before they're nice and ready to pick. Although hopefully Jack doesn't pick them all before they're ready. He's picked off 2 already, but he's forgiven. It's his birthday today, so here we go. So we've got our fresh figs, and these are just wonderful. I will say I love fresh figs. They have an interesting crunch texture to them if you've never eaten them fresh, but they are just amazing. I'm going to give my soup here a little bit of a stir, and then we're going to add in our corn. So just about a cup of frozen corn into our soup, because this is going to be our lovely black bean soup, and I love corn with my black bean. But these colors are just screaming fall right now. So exciting. And then let me get our Gouda, and we'll peel off. Here we go. And so you've got both havarti and Gouda, which are both, havarti is slightly softer. It's a more soft cheese than Gouda, but both of these have really great melting points, which make them optimal for grilled cheeses. Here we go. And I think they're going to just pair really well. The gouda and the havarti is going to work really well with the fig jelly and the fresh figs because it's not an overpowering cheese. It's going to really complement them. And then the same thing. When I use salami in a sandwich, I don't like to use a really strong cheese because I find that salami has a lot of spice to it and you don't want it to compete with the cheese. There we go. Let's put, I've got my pumpkin seeds on here. Pop those off. And let's get our next one on.
You have a question. Have you done a live making sourdough bread from scratch?
So I've done a couple parts of it on there. So to make sourdough bread, it's not a process that takes like start to finish 30 minutes. It's 30 minutes, but it's spread over like 24 hours. So I do have videos on how you can make your own starter, as well as how you can make your very first loaf of bread from start to finish with all the wait times, because there is wait times for it, because it's not like a yeast bread where you can wake up and say, hey, I want sourdough bread in 2 hours. Or it takes much longer, but it is worth it. So I do have videos as well as a recipe card that I have for everybody on how you can make your first bread loaf and your starter. And it takes your starter about a week of feeding it before it's ready to make your bread, because it has to get to the right fermentation. Okay, let's see. We've got it in here. Let's add our beans and then we'll shred up our chicken. So I've got some good old black beans here. We're going to just strain them and then we'll throw them in here. And these are plain, not seasoned black beans. Sometimes when I do a black bean soup where I puree part of it, I'll get the seasoned black beans. But for this, it's just good old plain. So we're going to put them here and we're going to rinse them. Otherwise, that starchy bean water will make your soup kind of go a brownish color. So good. We're going to add these in. So beautiful. And I'm going to flip our sourdough because I think the first flip should be about ready right now. Beautiful. And what I'm wanting to do right now is I'm heating up the bread, and then our second flip on each side will be to toast it to get it nice and brown. But sourdough is a much thicker slice of bread. So if you try to toast it all the way through with just one go, you're never going to get to your cheese to be nice in the middle. So nice and low. I've got it over medium heat. Let me taste my soup batter here, or my soup broth. And I think I'm going to add in a little bit more chicken bouillon. And because we did add in a good amount of pumpkin. So about another teaspoon or so of the chicken bouillon. Just get a little bit more of that flavor. But all the other spices are perfect. Just needs a little salt.
Has a question for you.
What's for dinner tonight? I think tonight I'm going to make spaghetti and meatballs or something along that line, because that is one of Jack's favorite meals. And since he's the birthday king today, he gets what he wants, which was kind of crazy. We had to take a shower with balloons today because he didn't want to leave his balloons. And so, yeah, it's a little thing. Let's get our chicken out. It should be nice and cooked all the way through. And we're going to just shred it up to add into our soup. Now, you can always buy pre-shredded chicken as well, but I find this is just a really good way to make shredded chicken. That I feel like goes a little bit better than just dicing it up and sauteing it. So just take your 2 forks and you're just going to shred it apart like this, and then we can throw it into our soup. And this we kind of coated it with our ancho chili powder, our smoked paprika, liquid smoke, a little bit of olive oil, Worcestershire, garlic, salt, onion powder, and just baked it in the oven for about, 20, 30 minutes, probably 20 minutes.
Chad has sent a lot of birthday wishes for Jack.
Oh, well, he will appreciate that. I don't think, at 2, I don't think he quite understands. But I think when I take his cake out last night, if you guys didn't catch it, we decorated his cake. So we should have that video there or a short of it or something like that, but you can see it. But I think when he sees it, he's going to be very, very excited. I didn't want to leave it out, take it out yet, because last time, I think it was maybe Teddy's birthday, I had his cake out and Teddy came and took a little swipe of frosting in the middle of the day. But I'll get it out here in just a little bit because I have it in the fridge to keep it nice and cool. But we did this. It's not a monster truck. It's a monster truck school bus, which is ridiculous and hilarious at the same time. But he has that on his cake there. But it turned out really cute. Okay, let's see. Beautiful. Let's get this flipped. And now we're going to do our kind of toasting up base for it, where we're going to get it nice and crispy and melted. So I'm going to rotate this and we'll kind of do our last little things as we finish up our soup here. Okay, let's add in our shredded chicken here. So you see how it just shredded up beautiful, but it will have lots of flavor. A little bit of liquid smoke in there really just adds nice flavor to it. And one chicken breast. It was a big chicken breast, but it gives you a lot of meat here.
You have a question? You have a question? What veggies did you add to the soup?
So, as we give it a little stir here, you guys can see we've got, we did pumpkin puree, we have corn, we have sweet peppers, sweet potatoes, onions, and then black beans, which I know aren't a veggie, but a legume, and the same thing. And then we're going to add in some green onions, some fresh cilantro, and avocado as well. So, pretty delicious to it. So let's prep all that up because we are almost ready for our resting. So I just flipped my cutting board over, so I've got a nice kind of fresh side here. We're going to take off the bottom part of our green onions, and we're going to dice all of these up so that we can throw this in our soup at the very end. Same with our cilantro and our diced up avocado, which will add just great flavor and a pop of freshness to this soup. Here we go. So we've got our cilantro, or our green onions. And then I've got, I'm going to add off, try to grab just the leaves here. And then we've got our fresh cilantro here. And we're going to dice this up. So I'll have probably about a tablespoon, maybe 2 tablespoons of fresh cilantro. Here we go.
Is there another good way besides bouillon to flavor a soup?
I mean, you can always you could use chicken broth. I always find chicken broth from the store is a little bit bland, which is why I like to use bouillon. But you could definitely do that and then add in some more salt to kind of get you to that next kind of flavor up on it. Or you could always take the time to make your own broth, which is always delicious, but takes a hot minute. Okay, we've got these flipped over. We're going to do our final toasting up on the other side on here. And I've got my cilantro, my green onions. And let's go with our avocado here. We'll cut this through. And I always like to throw this on at the, bit because avocado in our soups are just delicious. So we'll peel off our avocado skin, which will allow me to dice it up a little bit easier. Here we go. And this one looks like it got dropped, I'm guessing. So I always leave mine on the counter to ripen up, but Jackie thinks my avocados and my fruit are always balls, and half the time they get thrown across the room. Here we go. And got our avocado prepped and ready here. Let me wash my hands. Since they've been avocado-fied, I can see the cameraman has stolen a cookie already. Hopefully he enjoyed them. He did. That is good. Okay. Let me taste my soup right now. And then we should be about ready to serve up here. Beautiful. I'm going to turn this off. We're going to add in part of our green onions. We'll save a little bit to garnish with, and part of our cilantro, because again, we'll save some to garnish with. To mix it in here, get this nice fresh flavor in there. I'm going to mix it in. It's going to add this lovely, beautiful pop of green color to our soup, but it's going to be delicious. Beautiful. Let's check on our grilled cheeses over here. Beautiful. Perfect. I'm going to turn this guy off, and we can move these right over here. I'll move him over there and he can sit, because we're going to serve up mine. Well, he's a bit much but just look at this. Beautiful. You see that fig and the havarti and the gouda. It's going to be delicious. Okay, let's get ready to serve up our lunch here. Let me got my cookies right here. And I need to get a plate and a bowl, and we will be ready. Get my little cauldron. And a ladle. Okay. Let me grab our sandwich here. We only need half, but look at our beautiful. So for lunch today, we have our pumpkin sourdough bread with havarti, gouda, fresh figs, and fig jam on for a really bougie but delicious sandwich. And then we're going to serve that with our pumpkin black bean and chicken soup. So we made a lovely broth using pumpkin puree. And we have sweet potatoes, onions, corn, black beans, sweet peppers, carrots, green onions, cilantro, and lovely kind of ancho chili powder spices. We're going to top it with a little bit of fresh cilantro, some fresh green onions, and then, of course, several chunks of avocado to mix into the soup for this lovely, fresh kind of flavor to it. And then for dessert, we have our pumpkin chocolate chip cookies. Look how soft and gooey and delicious they are. They're chewy, they've got brown butter in it, and full of pumpkin pie spice and pumpkin puree. Well, guys, thank you so much for joining us here. Don't forget to like and subscribe. I try to do live cooking shows every single day, kind of show you what we're making for our family and hopefully teach you guys something along the way. Again, we do upload all of our videos to the link on our page. So if you ever want to recreate any of these recipes at home, you can always go to that page, search for what we made, and you can watch and cook along with us again. We also have a link to our Amazon storefront that has all of our different cooking gear and gadgets. I've got my Hexclad, my Dutch ovens, my knives, my cutting boards, all the different gadgets I use in the kitchen I have in there for you guys to check out. But again, thank you so much for joining us here. Don't forget to like and subscribe.